Hi, she's Trixie and I'm Sarah, and this is our Yarn World, a place where we come to share the love of yarn crafts and what it gives us and what we hope it gives you. We are on episode 67 today, and we are coming with a very special episode. We have another tag.
Yes. It's called Never Have I Ever Crochet Tag, and we were tagged by Ashley from Stitchin' Ain't Easy. She tagged anybody who had a crochet or knitting channel. So we qualify. So I wrote down the questions and here we go. The first one is, have you ever crocheted in public? Yes.
Yes. No shame.
Yeah, we wrote down our answers so you wouldn't be having to wait. 2, have you crocheted in the car? Yes, while my husband's driving.
Yes, I have done it. When Olivia's octopus, when I was making that, I did the spiral in the car.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how you did that. 3, have you ever crocheted outside? Yes, on my front porch.
Yes, I have.
4, do you crochet at work? Since I work from home? Yep.
Yes, I obviously am a stay-at-home mom and work from home, so I do that. It's part of my job, but when I was at the daycare, and I think when I also worked at the dentist's office, I did bring my crochet work with me.
Yeah.
From time to time, I remember doing so.
5, have you ever sold your crochet? No.
Yup.
6, have you given crochet as a gift? Yes, for Christmas.
It's kind of my go-to method at this point.
Yeah. Have you ever received a crochet gift? Yes. My grandmother, my mom's mom, made me a doll. Well, she didn't make the doll. She made the dress, the hat, and the purse that went on the doll. And she made it for all of us granddaughters. And mine is very special and still in my craft room.
Yep, I have mine, so the answer would be yes. And also, I have also received other things from people as well.
Okay. 8, have you ever hoarded yarn because it's on sale? Only at the thrift store.
Yeah.
9, have you ever spun your own yarn? No.
Not yet.
10, have you ever spent hours looking at crochet patterns? Yes, on Pinterest.
Guilty. Pinterest and Etsy for me.
Have you ever stayed up all night crocheting? Nope.
Get on my level.
Yes.
Story time with this one.
Okay.
When before I had my first child, my daughter, he would blast to everyone where he worked at the time, which was like a town outside of ours. Everyone there, how I did yarn stuff as a living, and he would get me customers all the time through his work.
Yes, I remember this now.
And I would be stuck being a stay-at-home wife, and obviously I was crafting, but I was like, James, like, you're making me get these orders and it's like kind of hard to fill them. But there was one where it was like really detailed work. It was supposed to be a sorority labeled hat with logo, and I had mapped it all out and I got done, and my mom thought it was really good, and I did a couple of them. But I was, because we didn't use our extra room as, we didn't have a baby yet, we had an extra room as a TV room. And I would be in there up until like 4 o'clock in the morning, awake when he was getting ready to leave.
Oh my gosh.
And then falling asleep during the time he was at work.
Right.
And then when he'd walk in, we'd hang out.
Yeah.
And then he'd go to sleep, and I'd be up during that time to continue on the crafting. And that I had almost a 3rd shift schedule to get all the crafts done. And I was up all night.
That's crazy. Have you ever canceled plans to crochet instead? Only housework.
Yes, I would say for the fact that I needed a mental break, and I used that mental time to do my crochet because it was so therapeutic for me. So yes, but be quiet. People don't need to know.
Have you ever taken on a huge project? Yes. Blankets and Afghans are huge projects.
Yes. If you don't remember Bowser,
Yeah, that was a big project.
that I stuffed within a month.
Yes. All the little things that had to go on it, all the detail work. Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, my answer is yeah. And I still have to finish the Godzilla. So let's not talk about that.
Yep. 14. Have you ever made anything that you've gotten bored with making? Let me just confess. This circles to squares has gotten on my last nerve. But thankfully, I'm on my last circle to make into a square. This blanket's going to be beautiful. I keep telling myself that. But oh my goodness.
The thing is that you were an adult when you became this form of a crafter.
Yes.
And I became this sort of a crafter when I was really young. Before I was even 10 years old, I was doing this stuff all the time. And someone who's been able to make her own patterns since that point as well, visually, I had all these ideas. And so ideas I had the day before became boring so quick, but it's not like I didn't want them. I wanted them complete, but I didn't have the capacity to complete them because my little brain was like, ha ha!
New thing. 15.
So, yeah.
Have you ever skipped work to crochet? Only housework.
Okay, listen.
Oh my goodness.
Only housework, but it ain't procrastination if you're getting progress done on your project.
That's right. That's right. 16. Have you ever had a project ruined by a pet? No.
I've had my cats chase the yarn or try to grab at it before, but I was lucky enough that they never tore it out, so I'd say no.
17. Have you ever had a project ruined by a child? No.
My children are fascinated with my work, and so sometimes they get into it, and they have pulled out some rows before, but not enough to say that it's damaged. So that's a maybe considering what you guys consider damage.
Have you ever crocheted a wearable? I started to, but I never finished it.
I have, and I remember I was very young. This is when the Twilight movies were still out in theaters, and I had created my first wearable. I was a really young teen, maybe 13, 14, maybe in that range, like maybe 12, 13, 14, and I was so proud of it, and so I wore it to go see the movie that I was very excited to go see.
But you made that sweater vest just maybe 6 months ago too.
And I did make that sweater vest as well, yes.
Have you ever crocheted a toy or amigurumi? No.
Duh.
Okay.
That's most of my works on this channel.
Yeah. 20. Have you ever bartered with crochet? Now let me tell you a story. Once. And this was just recently, like within 2 weeks ago up here. The woman we get eggs from, I brought 2 blankets, one for her husband, as a surprise. And when I handed them to her, she was just so floored that she turned around, put the blankets down, got a grocery bag and filled it up with 1-pound bags of hamburger and said, "Here you go." And I'm just like, what? I came here for eggs. But she was so floored that I made her something handmade like that she and it was just an instant thing.
Exchange.
We never talked about it. It just happened. So
she has a farm, by the way, so all that meat was hers.
Yeah,
likely.
yeah. But it was just as for bartering on a regular basis, no.
Yeah. I'm sure I have. I have no recollection, but it feels like things I've done. I mean, doing this for so long, when I was a kid, I used to make these yarn dolls and bring them to school with me because they were so popular. This was before I had to leave Oak Ridge. Do you remember when I would
Yeah.
make all those yarn dolls? I'd just lay out the yarn and tie them in the
Yeah.
right places and make all... Yeah, I used to make them all the time, and I'd get things from them
Yeah.
by making them. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was young, but even back then I was doing things like that,
Yeah.
using my skill to be able to gain stuff from their skill.
And making toys.
Oh, yeah.
21. Have you ever made any crocheted things to donate? No, sadly.
Yes and no. Okay, so like in a roundabout way, I once had an order for someone who wanted me to make over 32 hats.
Wow.
So, because she worked in the hospital
Oh, yeah.
and she was going to be donating them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess that works. Yeah.
I got paid for it, which is not typical for a donation,
Right.
but they were meant for donation. And I also, anytime I make a shawl that isn't designated towards my mom or my mother-in-law, I plan to instantly send it over to a old living's home.
Yeah.
Just as a means to be able to put my craft in good hands, considering both of my great grandparents and my grandparents instilled this trait into me. I'd like to give it back.
Yeah. The elderly always
So,
appreciate
I know it's
what
my
people make.
I know it's my consistent intention to have this as a donation, but in a roundabout way, yes, I have in the past done it.
22. Have you ever had more than 5 whips at a time? No, I never had more than 2.
Yep, and don't want to talk about it.
23. Have you ever received yarn for a holiday or a birthday? Not yarn, but I have received Joanne's gift cards.
Oh, and because of my craft, I would receive baskets of yarn for Christmases and birthdays. It was like a staple go-to that people would bring me, especially my sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So yes, many times.
Have you ever unraveled a project to make another one? This is number 24, and I say yes.
Again, yes, many times.
25. Have you ever designed a crochet pattern? Yes.
Again, yes, many times.
26. Have you ever had any crochet patterns published? No.
No, I'm boring.
27. Have you ever crocheted with crochet thread? No.
Yes.
28. Have you ever taught 1 to 5 people to crochet? No, but maybe when we start our tutorials.
Yes, I taught her how to crochet.
She did. 29. Have you ever taught 5 or more people to crochet? Nope.
No. I have never been given the opportunity.
But maybe with these tutorials. 30. Have you ever dyed your own yarn? Yes, with avocado skins. And it turned out really pretty too.
Not yet, no.
And that is the end of this tag. Now, we're going to do the same thing Ashley did. Anybody who has a yarny channel, a crochet channel, a knitting channel, anything to do with stitching of any kind, sewing.
This really does apply, very
Sewing,
versatile.
yeah.
You can just apply whatever yarn or thread craft that you
Yeah.
do into it.
Yeah. We're gonna tag you. So that is the conclusion of that part. And
All the questions will be in the description.
yes. Our scripture for today is words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard. And that's found in Ecclesiastes 9:17. I don't know the version. I'm assuming it's New King James Version. This was written back when I didn't have the New Living Translation yet. So, and I was always reading the New King James Version. So I'm assuming it's that. But I wrote down a little bit of a note for myself. Teachers, pastors, elders in your life, anybody that's a grandparent, a mom, a dad, aunt, uncle, anybody, that has those memories from way back. When they speak, we should be listening to what they're saying, because their wisdom needs to be heard so that we can follow through. If we're not listening to our elders, our teachers, our pastors, our the people in our lives, eventually they die, and then we don't have those wisdoms anymore. I'm finding that with my grandma. She taught me so much, and I still miss her to this day, because I still want to call her. I still want to go to her house and talk with her. And she died, and I don't have that anymore. And she had a lot of wisdom. Both my grandmothers did, and my grandfathers. And, I'm very lucky that way. But I wrote down, the quieter they speak, the more you want to hear what they have to say. No one should have to yell to be heard. My dad was a yeller. He went to Vietnam as a Marine, and came back just a different man. I might have said this before in different videos, and he came back, and he wanted quiet, but with 3 kids and a wife and close neighbors, they lived in a close neighborhood. It was not going to happen. And so when people want quiet and they don't get it, and it's very frustrating to them, and back in the day it was just a reason to snap at other people, and loud was the way it worked. And people don't tend to want to listen to someone who's always yelling at them. This is why this spoke to me so well, is words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard. I don't know about you, but anybody that speaks quietly, all of a sudden everybody shuts up in the room and they want to hear what that person has to say. I don't know why. It just always works. And the quieter they are, the more they listen. And that's just my take on it. So, what do you think?
Well, I think that anyone who has lived through an experience, you can learn something from. It doesn't necessarily matter their age.
Right.
It's how they have been able to process the experiences that they went through,
yeah,
in a way that allowed that they still were able to grieve what they've lost, learn from what they couldn't control, and move on with the lessons that they've learned.
Yeah.
And you can find those people everywhere. Again, the older you are, the more likely you will have more to talk about. But I find that you can find someone that will have much more shocking wisdom from even children that I have talked to that have lived through really tough times.
I have to say, Sarah has always been one of these people that all of her friends come to her for the advice. And it's always been good advice, and it's been sound. And I've never heard anybody say anything against what she's ever said to them. And so, yeah, I have to agree with that. I wasn't thinking like that when I thought of this, but it is true. Everybody has wisdom in them.
Yeah. My point is not to take away what you said. It's
No.
more of people who have lived long enough have something to tell because they have made it. Does that make sense?
And they've experienced it.
I would reckon, though, that you will gain more wisdom from the person that is older and is still living.
Yeah.
Because there are people that die young to the experiences that they have
Yeah.
experienced, that even though they haven't necessarily passed to the next life, they have not been able to move on
Yeah.
with their life.
True.
And the people that have a way to be able to look at the world in a way that is still proving to them that it's still worth living.
Yeah.
And those are the people I like to be around, because I
Yeah.
have friends that lived on the streets, that survived many horrific lives, some that have been a part or almost a part of sex trafficking. I've been around people who have just been in that trade, and that was the only way to make it out alive.
Yep.
Drugs, alcohol, gambling, money, and yet they have come out and they still say it's worth it, and they have come out of the other side, and you're thinking, okay, you've lived through these things that, like, I'm playing it dumb because out of their respect, I'm not going to just broadcast what is not my story on here, but just that broad overview, right?
Yeah.
You would think at some point it would be so life draining,
Yeah.
that they wouldn't want to move on. But people even my own age that was their whole entire life, and now they're coming on the other side of it, and they're making a new future for themselves, and they're like, life isn't always perfect.
No.
But I am proud of how I have chosen to make it through. And if
Yeah.
I am proud of myself, I can still find ways to redeem myself.
Yeah.
And there's just something about the fact that they choose to continuously redeem their story and give themselves new life and new hope for the things that they are willing to live for,
Right.
even if it's and it has to be for yourself first.
Yeah. Well,
and then it has to be for the things that you want to live for.
Yeah.
And then especially if you have a relationship with God, that's even that much more prominent.
Right.
And again, I love everything I've learned from the elders in my life. I have just known many people that have been generations ahead of me, that have argued with me with truths that I know to be real, just because they have given up.
Yeah.
Or they have settled in an idea that this is the only way that they are willing to operate, and it's at the cost of their relationships and at the cost of the people around them. And I am scared to see the people that they will be left with in their old age.
I know.
And it's that sort of thinking where it's like, okay, I've come to understand it's not just an age thing that wisdom comes from.
No.
It's a life thing, and how you've learned to cope with what life has given you, even when it's not fair.
Maturity comes at all different ages too.
There
are kids that are 10 years old that are a lot older maturity wise than 50-year-old men, and that's another way of wisdom coming through in all different ages.
I would like to say another thing. You had mentioned something about the volume. That's actually a tested study, by the way. There was this professor that did clinical studies, it sounds like. This is something that he did, but he liked to do it in his classroom a lot because that was the easiest way for him to get a huge group of people to test on.
Yeah, true.
They willfully come, but then they choose not to listen, and then they get poor grades, right?
Right.
And he's like, I don't want to come looking back on me like I'm not teaching them. They're just choosing to ignore.
Right.
So how can I do it? One class, he chose to yell the whole entire time he taught. Their notes and their test scores afterward were so bizarre and so inconsistent that the following week, on another test they were having in their weekly tests, there was a day in which he spoke to a whole, college classrooms are pretty large.
Yeah, and
they generally up, right?
Yeah.
He spoke to speak at like this volume and that amount of volume of space. And it got to the point where even though he was acting like there was nothing wrong, his whole entire classroom had got out of their seats and cornered him, and all of them were unwilling to even speak over him, to tell him to speak louder because they were scared they were going to lose some part of important information.
And
No one ever asked him why he did it.
Right.
Their scores were phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he theorized if parents learned to control their volume,
Yes.
there is much more of a likelihood of children being more willing to address them than if they're loud. And it just is like you're obviously forcing the information on them when you yell.
Yeah.
By speaking to them in a way that you choose to address them as if they can understand, they're more likely to respond, and they continue to study, and it proved to be correct,
Yes.
even at children as young as 2.
Right. I believe that wholeheartedly.
And it's not easy. And granted, when those little rascals are on your nerves, it's not exactly the most easiest to do. But
Exactly.
but it's one of those things where it's like, when you have other verses in the Bible that repeat constantly, where it's like a soft tone can turn away a harsh word, or like all those things where it expresses that tone matters, volume matters,
Yes.
the way that God wants you to talk
Yes.
matters. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard. And I also notice they consider those who are talk softly are considered wise. Mm-hmm. I know that more people that talk softly are more willing to hold their words in and listen
Yes.
more.
Yes.
I know more quiet people that listen more and take in more.
Yes. And speak less, and people find them wise.
Well, it's not just because they're quiet and like cowardice.
No.
They're quiet and they're pensive, and then they speak in constructed sentences. I know that probably sounds really a really forced way of saying, but it's like their points are literally to the point. They're not.
Yes.
When you yell, you're screaming, and it sometimes takes forever to get to the point because you're exhausting yourself, and your brain's not even able to catch up because you can't hear what you're saying.
Right.
And people that are quiet tend to just say exactly
What they mean
what they
at
mean.
the time.
And it's so condensed into the point where it's like,
That's it.
that's it.
Yeah. That's all you got to say. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard. Ecclesiastes 9:17. And we will put that in the description bar too.
We have enjoyed this nice tag today. We
Yes.
hope that you have as well. We are very excited to come back next week with projects ready. I kind of told Mom this earlier today, but I kind of fell into this bit of a death trap that is Pinterest and Etsy. I found some projects that I might now be undertaking soon.
But they're still stitching.
So you might be seeing some really cool things in the near future, and I'm really
Yeah.
excited to share them with you. So until next time, we love you. We hope that you guys have a great rest of your week, and as always, we hope that you stitch your way
To mental health.